Hey, this is a continuation of the Game of Romance book, and I want to talk about survival listening. So, one of the big challenges in happiness and love and romance is that human beings are never present. We are never here now. We are generally distracted by a number of things. We're distracted by the past, wondering if we did the right thing, if we didn't do the right thing, what would have happened if we had done something else. Maybe you're replaying an argument or a situation over and over again, something that upsets you that you just can't let go of. So there's so many examples, but if you just notice how much time, like you could start to think about what percentage of the day you're literally thinking about the past. An upset, a wondering, just generally being distracted and lost in thinking about how things could have been or something you wish you had done or not done and all that. Another distraction is the future. Human beings are often in the future. And I don't mean like space, I don't mean like time travel. I mean like thinking about the future, having your attention on the future. People worry about the future, they plan for the future, they try to control circumstances to increase the odds of having the future they want, or they try to control people to increase the odds of having the future that they want. In all kind of different ways, people are distracted by the future and the past. None of this is terribly helpful, by the way. There are lessons to learn, but generally we stay in the past or the future far beyond any lessons there are to learn. What we tend to be listening for, in fact, is what's wrong or where's the threat. You know, people tend to listen for things like, is this right? Is this wrong? Do I agree? Do I disagree? What's in it for me? Is there any threat here? Do I trust this person? Is this person dangerous to me? So forth and so on. And it makes sense why we think this way. It's evolutionary, it's genetically ingrained in us from our early human days when we were not the top of the food chain. There were things out there bigger, faster, and meaner than us that were hungry, looking for us. And so the tribes that were pretty laid back when they heard a twig snap behind them in the middle of the night, they're not here. They didn't make it. The tribes that every time there was a twig that snapped, everybody hops to alert, we're the ones who made it, right? So that's good news and bad news. The good news is we have a very reliable survival mechanism which has us constantly be looking for threats and what's wrong so that we can respond appropriately and stay safe. Perfect. Except that is not the recipe for a fulfilling life or a happy life or a life filled with love and romance, for example. Nothing can withstand the constant barrage of what's wrong here. If you look at your partner long enough wondering what's wrong, you're going to find something. If you keep looking at your relationship and inside of the context of what's wrong here, you're definitely going to find some answers. It's just a matter of time. Nothing can withstand that. No thing and no person. Another way that manifests itself a lot is being right. People love being right. Oh my goodness. How many times have you been in an argument, you don't know what you're talking about, or you're wrong, but you stick with it because you want to save face. You want to be right. Or just not even in an argument, just in casual conversations, you're making statements proving that you're right about something, looking for agreement, making sure people don't disagree, making sure everybody's lined up. If you do anything like that, every time you're right, you're literally making everyone else around you wrong. Just think about that. Every time you establish how right you are about something, what does everyone else get to be? Exactly. Everyone else gets to be wrong. And how do you like it when you're wrong? Probably not so much. So every time you're being right, you give everyone else around you the experience of being wrong, which is not terribly helpful, like in a relationship and in the experience of love and happiness and romance. So one of the things you're going to have to give up is that there's something wrong here, and you're going to have to give up being right. Now, you might be correct about something from time to time, probably not quite as often as you think if you're like most of us. However, being right about something is really detrimental. There's no benefit there. You don't get anything out of that other than just the feeling of being right. And by the way, it's useful not to underestimate people's desire to be right. People will fight, people will give up relationships, people will hurt themselves, countries will go to war just to prove one person's right and one person's not. So I recommend don't play that game. And I recommend playing another game called, nothing's wrong here. This is what it looks like. What's it? Whatever you're looking at. This is what this person looks like. This is what this situation looks like. It's not right and it's not wrong. And from there, you could start to create an open space from which you could listen and just simply hear what's going on. Mostly you don't hear what people are saying. Mostly when people are in conversation, one person speaks, we hear it, we start to hear it, and then we have something to say about it, like a conversation, a judgment. I believe this, I don't believe this. All internal, it's going on inside your head. But there's a voice in there that's chattering away. If you just simply stop reading for a moment and just simply look at the page, the voice will say, why are you stopping reading and just looking at the page? Or something like that. Whatever that voice says, that's the voice I'm talking about. Or the voice that's right now saying, there's no voice here, this guy's an idiot. That's the voice. So most people never listen to the other person. Most people are just simply listening to the voice in their head that's commenting on what the other person is saying. So someone says, good morning, it's a great day. And your voice automatically starts saying, well, it's not such a great day. And then you respond to, like you're the person who says, oh, well, it's not such a great day. Just notice that when someone's speaking to you, notice there's another voice going on, and then try to listen to who's speaking and not your commentary about what they're saying. It might be a little tricky to notice at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty much a 24/7, 365 phenomena. In other words, left unchecked or unobserved, most people will pretty much be having conversations with a voice in their head about what's going on in the world rather than actually be engaged with what's going on in the world. Somebody, let's say your wife or husband or partner walks in the door after work and is quiet, and then you might have the reaction, oh my gosh, I wonder what happened, what's wrong? And in fact, they're just delightfully tired after an exhilarating day. But the energy that you're bringing to it and the experience that you're having and bringing to the relationship and to the other person is that there's something wrong here, and then the person who walks in who's just had an exhilarating day and just sort of enjoying the energy well spent of the evening, of the afternoon, now has to talk you out of there's something wrong here. And instead of simply being able to share the experience or just simply enjoy the experience, we're now having a conversation dispelling there's something wrong here, or being annoyed every time I come home. I have to deal with, whatever. It just adds something every moment to the relationship that's adversarial. Like, think of it as headwind. If both parties are constantly thinking there's something wrong here, and both parties are being right and that sort of thing, there's just very little opportunity to create anything beautiful and magical. So I'm literally saying, take pride and maybe have some fun, play a game with, what are you listening for? You could be listening for how magnificent your partner is, how brilliant they are. You could be listening for, how life just seems to magically unfold in the perfect way. Those are not the correct things to listen for in the world, but you can see they already start to pull for a different quality, a different experience. And that might be the experience that you're looking for individually or in your relationship. So I recommend noticing when you're listening for something is wrong here, noticing when you have a tendency to want to be right about something, like save face about something, prove a point, right? And then really back off of both of those. Instead of listening for something wrong, listen for something else that you would like to listen for. You could start off with all is well, for example. And then you could listen for, instead of listening for being right, you could listen also for all is well, everything's perfect, being generous, being flexible, being patient, being kind, just anything, right? So that in and of itself can make a huge difference, and not only in your romantic relationship, but just any relationship that you're in. Okay, new thought. Preface. Why did I write this book? I wrote this book because I, like many people I've talked to over the years, have had a lot of pain and suffering and confusion in the area of relationships and happiness and love and romance. I've spent many years of my life looking outside of me for these things, for happiness and love. I have tried an infinite number of strategies and tactics, most of which fell short of my desire. Over the last 20 years, I've coached thousands of people, many of which had commitments that were unfulfilled in the area of love and romance. This book is designed to be a resource to love and happiness, and access to having the kind of relationship that you would love to have, and access to partnership, if you will. The book is designed to be actionable. It's short so that you can get through it and get right to work on having fun and play and romance and love and happiness in your life. Please enjoy. Okay, new thought. Simple versus easy. Being true to yourself. So one of the things that I think is really critical in having a fulfilling relationship is have a guiding principle. Invent what your values are, for example. something that I hold very close to me is this idea of love and contribution. I try to practice living a life of love and contribution. Um, the contribution that I speak of essentially is leaving people better than I found them, always, and in different, fun, and delightful ways. But one of the benefits of kind of creating your own principles or values is that you now have a compass or a guiding direction that you can follow. In other words, when you come to questions or frustrations or situations in which you're not clear how to proceed, one of the ways you can deal with that is to ask yourself, what would your guiding principle do here? So an example for me is when I come up to a situation that I'm unsure about, or if I'm fearful or anxious, or even getting upset about something, I ask myself this simple question: what would love and contribution do here? There are a couple of things I've noticed about this. One is, usually the answer is very simple, and it's often not terribly easy. Answers tend to come in the form of forgive that person, let go of your need to be right about that, be generous, be patient, be kind, apologize, make amends, etc. And while these sound like good ideas and the right thing to do, that's not why I choose those types of strategies. I choose those types of strategies because they're literally true to love and contribution. They're consistent with love and contribution by my declaration. And then secondly, when I'm true to myself, I notice I feel great. I'm smarter, I'm clearer. It really is access to happiness. And so I want to bring up this conversation that I call simple versus easy. Being true to yourself, right? Which is when you come to an intersection in life, a fork in the road, especially if you're upset or someone else is upset, something's not going well, ask yourself the following question: what would my highest principle and value do here? For me, that's love and contribution. You get to choose what that is for yourself. Next thought: owning your feelings. Something I've really come to value in myself and others is my ability to own my feelings, which is always starting from the premise that my feelings come from me and never from outside myself. So no one's doing anything to me. It's not the situation. My feelings are mine. And it's not to say I always have control over them, but I know where to look, that these feelings are mine. If I'm happy, sad, upset, angry, anxious, whatever, it's all coming from me. And so a couple things I think really powerful get provided in this conversation. One is when you're the owner of your feelings, you really have access to happiness, and because you can generate happiness, you can generate love once you get the hang of your feelings come from you and you have something to say about that. Secondly, it's delightful to be around people who, own their own feelings. Because when you're with somebody who owns their own feelings, you never get, accused of upsetting someone or, because that's just not how that works. People, it is a gracious and generous space to be around when you're around people who own their own feelings. Also, I have this idea of do no damage. It's kind of like the doctor's pledge, um, the Hippocratic oath, which is do no harm, right? Well, that would be an excellent oath to take in a relationship, like when you're upset and you're angry and you're feeling impatient, probably not the best time to resolve something, you know, because you're not going to be performing well. And you have a smaller chance of getting the outcome that you want, right? So, owning your own feelings is wonderful. It's access to happiness. It makes you somebody who's enjoyable to be around. And, you're much less likely to do a ton of damage in your relationship that you just have to go clean up later. Every time you do and say something stupid, that's that much more work to do to get it all cleaned up, with your partner. And so one of the reasons it's so important to own your own feelings is has to do with how the brain works. So there's so much that has been said and written about how the brain works. I'm just going to touch on it in a very general way. And there's plenty of easily accessed information to dig in a little deeper if you'd like. But essentially, the brain is set up in three sections. First, there's the reptilian brain, then there's the mammalian brain, and then there's the conscious brain, or the human brain, right? And so here's what's important, and here's what's relevant to this conversation. The minute you get upset, the reptilian brain locks out the other two parts of the brain, and your ability to think and feel go to just about zero, pretty close to zero, 10% or so. And how it works with most people is right when they get upset, the reptilian brain locks down the feeling and thinking brain, and then that's when they try to have a conversation. So don't do that. That causes problems and creates big messes. Once the brain is in lockdown and you're operating at about 10%, you're upset and the reptilian brain has taken over, the first thing that you can do to get yourself out of it is to get your mammalian brain, your feeling brain engaged, right? You can start thinking about, how do I feel about this? This is after the first initial impact. Get yourself feeling again for just a minute. You can ask yourself, how do I feel about this? And then get your body under control, the breathing and the heart rate, whatever's going on. You got to get your body under control, get your brain up and running. Second thing, once you start to feel something, is, what do I think about this? What do I think about this? How did I get into this situation? Get your brain thinking, right? Once your brain's thinking and your body's under control, you then could actually have a real conversation in which you're reliable not to do a bunch of damage, So now this is great for every part of your life. And here's the takeaway. When you get upset, when there's a threat, when you have the, fight, flight, or freeze, right? Literally what's happening is your reptilian brain is taken over and locks out the other two brains so that it can take control and keep you safe, responding and reacting rapidly and with authority, okay? Which is great if you're fighting a wild animal, not so good if you're trying to resolve a conflict with your partner. So what you want to do is you want to pause, get your brain up and running, get your body under control, and then when you can be responsible for how you feel and how you're being and what you have your attention on, then you can proceed. So I think this is critical. You can save so much damage by just simply not moving forward when you're not there, when your brain's not functioning. So again, the takeaway is, have the important conversations when you're available. One of my favorite sayings is, successful generals always pick the time and location of their battles. So if there's an important conversation to have, an important event, make sure you're there at your best. Okay, that's it for now. Thank you.